What can new space do for halting desertification? What is the problem? The Sahel is a tough place to live because it is dry and hot, but it has always been inhabited. Sahelian people have found ways to adapt, produce, and keep nature in balance with human presence. Savanna ecosystems are a mix of drought-resistant trees and grass. Climate is dry and uncertain, water is scarce. The best way to sustainably take advantage of nature is cattle raising. Camels, goats, sheep, and cows highly resilient like the people that they take care of them. But the key is mobility. When conditions allow, after a short rainy season, herds move from south to north through a complex system of corridors, stopovers at water points, and grazing where vegetation is available, moving before it is overgrazed to prevent destruction and erosion. But science and technology came in late 50s and perturbed this smart, also fragile, man-nature equilibrium. Underground fossil water were mobilized, and temptation to establish agriculture was too strong to be avoided. Some shepherds settled around the abundant blue gold spots, and more farmers came from elsewhere in search of new opportunities. Struggles between sedentary farmers and nomadic shepherds became more and more frequent as the best traditional grazing areas were converted into croplands, causing at present more death than terrorism. Illicit smuggling activities are often a matter of survival for nomadic people. Even if the yields are low, farmers contribute to food security of a rapidly growing population. The solution relies on agroforestry and fair share of land and water between shepherds and farmers. A balanced mix of tree-based agriculture and transhumant cattle raising is the best option to sustainably adapt to the ongoing climate challenge. Properly managed, Sahelian soils are an incredible giant carbon sink. This is a challenge of the Great Green Wall initiative launched 20 years ago by the 13 countries that have the Sahelian biome in common from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. But the results are still far to be achieved. Why is it so difficult to solve it? Farming villages are obstacles for shepherds, and cattle are a treat from crops. Tree crops are more adapted, but they need several years and a lot of attention to grow and become autonomous and resilient. Shepherds face difficulties to market their products and make a decent living with a limited number of animals. Long-term sustained and massive investment is needed to structure the landscape in such a way a new man-nature equilibrium can be established, an equilibrium that will have to be carefully regulated by the concerned populations themselves and guaranteed by the authorities. Public and charity funding, also essential to kickstart and contribute to de-risk the investment process, are far from being sufficient, and international, national and local private resources and climate finance ought to be attracted. Private investment requires security and profitability, security on where the money is invested, and certainty on how the money is transformed into sustainable living assets. As conditions are difficult, products need to be sold at the highest prices possible and therefore clearly identified as exceptional and worth the price. Traceability at territory and along value chains is indispensable, but particularly challenging in those vast and scarcely populated and poorly communicated regions. How can new space help? 1. Understand the logic and drivers of transhumance, monitoring the movements of herds, guiding shepherds toward the areas where vegetation is present, avoiding overload of water point and overgrazing. 2. Understand when the villages and crops and water ponds, wells and drillings are located. 3. Securing shepherds' grazing lands against agriculture colonization through established and protected land rights. 4. Developing oases of tree-based, water-efficient agriculture where soils is naturally fertile and water accumulates naturally. 5. organizing energy autonomous villages in such a pattern that the cattle can access water and resting and feeding areas without destroying farmers' trees and under-tree crops. 6. Anticipate climate change and incorporate it in the planning of landscape restoration and adaptive strategies, and identify where investments are needed and feasibly in the form of land degradation neutrality transformative projects to reduce conflicts and ensure better livelihood. 7. Creating a secure blockchain system that connects money with green assets. They allow to create and track the exact origin of product generated from producers' farm, herds to consumer fork, a transparent and accountable system that ensures trust between all stakeholders: shepherds, farmers, project developers, off-takers, and investors. To achieve such a traceability system, existing satellites are useful, but not sufficient. A constellation of 80 nanosatellites embarking hyperspectral cameras will allow involved stakeholders, countries, decision makers, investors, off-takers, and so on, to picture a village of any point of the Great Green Wall area up to twice an hour. And this is the next challenge that we need to overcome together to move towards a more sustainable future.